I'd like to call the meeting to order, please.
I couldn't find it, but he gives me another one. That's
Roll call.
Mayor Yanish.
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Amon.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Dockin.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here.
DeBlee.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Would you all please stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Under proposed additions or deletions, we just came from a closed session, and I'd ask Councilman Amon, when he is ready, if you would report on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had approximately a 1-hour session with our city administrator, as is outlined in the charter, to review her performance. And overall, I just want to say that I think it was very conclusive, that her overall performance has been meeting and exceeding all expectations. There was some direction that was given and good communication between all of us. We appreciate the input from all the council people and the mayor on the direction we're going. And there will be a more condensed summary of the actions reported probably at our next Labor Relations Committee meeting. I want to thank Sharon Klump from Springstead working with me on this. It was a good report, and I think we can improve on it in the future. And again, if the council and mayor have any other ideas for the review process, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any further proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent items. Do I hear a motion to approve or
So move.
Second. A motion has been made and seconded to approve and accept the consent items. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. That motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, may I be excused for 1 minute, please?
Sure. There have been no items removed from the consent agenda, so we'll move into the Willmar City Council open forum, which Mr. Stiles, do you want to come up and tell us your name and address?
I've got my grandson with me here, Jacob Morris, and he lives in the house north of us that I live. I'm Chuck Stiles, 1410 Southeast 9th Street, and I just want to say a few words about our flooding problem in our ditch. And I don't hear too well. That's the main reason I've got Jacob standing by me. And probably an even more important reason is he lives in the lowest spot on 9th Street Southeast. And we had a serious flood a few years ago. And water was going off the street through their garage. Am I close enough to this thing? And yeah, why don't you show them where we live there? Yeah, right there. Jacob, the Morrises are in the second house there from 14th Avenue Southeast. And I'm in the third house. And the ditch there, all the way from 19th Avenue to 14th Avenue Southeast, has just been deepened. I was not home that day, and we come back and the ditch was deepened. And my daughter, who's Jacob's mother, was there and watched this Donick get their big scooper, I can't think of the name of it, threw the dirt up there on the wrong side, and so it didn't alleviate our flooding at all if there was any intention of making a berm or anything to protect us from another flood. As I see it, we have, we citizens of Willmar and the council have two options to eliminate any future flooding problems. And a berm doesn't sound too hot to Jacob's mother, my daughter, because water, if we really have a flood, I want to pass this around. You guys pass this down. This is today's weather report by, what's Paul's last name?
Douglas.
Douglas, thank you. It don't look good for June or for any time now that we have global warming. And I really expect a 50-year, 100-year, maybe even 1,000-year incident. And so I'm just here briefly to ask the city council to see if we can do something about this. The other alternative besides a berm is show them the county digs there on along 5th Street, the angled one there.
To the left of the old plant there, right there.
Yep, there we go. And the county has a couple of small ponds. Oh, okay. Right here, between the sewer plant or the city property and 5th Street. Must be right in there. So that would be a neat place for a big holding pond. So another possibility would be down here in the corner where this makes a curve and goes under 19th Avenue. So I'll give it back to Randy here. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you coming up.
Thanks.
Also, is there a Forrest Peterson that would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Forrest Peterson, and with me tonight is Tim Daniels, and we represent the Willmar Nordic Ski Club, and we've had a organization in town for a number of years now, and we've raised funds and we work to groom cross-country ski trails in the city for public use at no charge. I guess first of all, I'd just like to thank the city for its cooperation over the years. We've had a real partnership with the city and the school, community ed, YMCA, the golf course, and even the state in terms of some land that we use to work, and then our club and citizen volunteers. And we've provided, except this past winter when there was no snow, But the previous winter, we had too much. But we provided a couple of cross-country ski trails in the city, and those have been heavily used by the public and also the high school cross-country ski team, which I believe was started in 1998, 99, something like that. They get about 40 kids out each year, so it's a great winter sport, a great winter activity. And then we also have a extensive public use of the trails, primarily on the golf course and in that state land that's just to the north. But also, when we're able to, we like to groom trails at Robbins Island. We've met with community ed and worked on some plans to do that. The club owns some equipment, big snowmobile, trail-type snowmobile, and a piece of grooming equipment. But the city has also made available its snowmobile and grooming equipment for that purpose. And I guess we're here tonight to ask the city to consider that equipment, keeping it. It's on, I believe that it's on the list for the public auction on Friday. And right now, our club really doesn't have the funds to go and buy that equipment at auction. We just gave this high school ski team $1,900 this year, and I guess there would be no cost to the city other than any lost revenue if that equipment were sold at public auction. And with both sets of equipment available, there's a much greater likelihood that we would be able to groom trails at Robbins Island as well, again, providing we get any snow next winter. But anyway, that's our information. If you have any questions or anything at any other time, we're be happy to help answer any of those questions. Do you have anything to add, Tim, to that? Or
just the fact that it's all volunteer. We all volunteer to keep the trails groomed. And in the past, the city had done it for a few years, and then either because of lack of manpower or lack of budget, they weren't able to do it. So then we were able to talk them into letting us use their equipment that was sat idle for a number of years. And we're able to maintain those trails at Robbins Island. And one nice thing about Robbins Island is they're lighted, so you can ski after dark. It's a nice feature to have in the wintertime when it gets dark so early.
Don't run away. I have a question to ask our city administrator. Charlene, is it possible to work some type of arrangement like we did for this HRA or whatever it was?
Well, the difference with the HRA is they're another public entity, and the Nordic Ski Club is not another public entity, so we simply can't transfer the piece of equipment to them as we did with the HRA. We have been approached by the school district, and they've expressed some interest in acquiring the equipment, and then they would presumably loan it to the Nordic Ski Club. And what we are prepared to offer the school district is similar to the HRA, that they could purchase the equipment at its depreciated value, which I believe, Holly, if I'm not correct, depreciated value for the piece of equipment is $5,000, or the school district could obtain it at auction. I mean, if the council would like us to do anything different with that, but based on your decision of the HRA, we were going to offer it to the school district at that depreciated value of $5,000 if they wish to do that. If you would wish to do something different than that, such as donate it to the school district, I mean, I think we can make that transfer because they're another public entity. Correct, Robert?
Yeah, I haven't looked specifically into it, but probably that could work.
Did you understand all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for coming very much. We'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Isn't that auction soon?
That auction is Friday.
This week?
It is.
So we would need to make a decision tonight to take it off the auction.
Well, again, if you want to do anything other than, my recommendation is that we proceed to auction unless the school district wishes to obtain it. And we think the depreciated value cost is $5,000. If you want to set a value lower than that, or up, a minimum and a maximum for the school district, I could certainly do that.
Well, that would be on Councilman Christensen's line. Do we hold that equipment from auction until we have an auction with every spring and fall? Is that right, Kevin?
We terminated the fall because of volume every spring.
Okay. But if we hold that piece of equipment for a year off in the auction, and
I mean,
You
you
work
certainly
both.
can, then we just, we continue with with any, maintenance, operating costs and insurance costs on the equipment. And, we were trying to decrease the size of our fleet and decrease our expenses.
We would take over any maintenance costs, as far as costs to maintain it or gas in it.
I don't know how that works. Or how that would work. Could you give me an answer on that?
I think we'd have to look at that, at
Okay.
that potential.
Thank you.
I don't have those costs with me tonight to know what those are, so.
Councilman Lee?
Should this be, I guess, Public Works Committee, would they have a chance to deal with this? Would not? before
The auction is scheduled for this Friday. I mean, it is, so, I mean, if you wish us to take it off the auction, we can do that. Just then the potential is that we, keep the piece of equipment another year and the expenses of that.
Councilman Anderson? did
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the sorts of decisions that we're going to be faced with that we've just talked about earlier. If we don't do anything, your plan is to sell it to the school district if they agree. So we do not need to take action.
The school district has made a request that we would transfer the piece of equipment to them. My suggestion is that we, offer it to the school district at the depreciated value, which is approximately $5,000. If they wish to do that, or again, they could go to auction. They could go to the auction on Friday. Maybe they would do better if they think they would do better at the auction on Friday. I mean, or
But I guess my question is, do we need to take an action to give you direction, or are you comfortable with?
if your direction is different from, if your direction is to remove it from the auction, yes, you would need to do that. It is scheduled for auction or to, again, my direction would be if the school district is not interested in paying the depreciated price, we would send it to auction on Friday, the 11th. If your direction is different from that, yes, I would need something.
No,
When will you know that, Charlie?
Well, the school district has until Friday to make that decision. The auction starts at what time, Kevin?
1 p.m.
At 1 p.m. is the auction on Friday.
Councilman Reese, did you have a question?
Well, are we able to just say that we're going to approach the school district, and if they're willing to do so, allow you to go through that sale in that manner? And if
Yes,
they
that
are
would
not,
be
then
similar
it
to the
goes to the
HRA.
auction?
Yep,
I mean-
that would be similar to the direction you gave with the HRA. Is that again, with the vehicle for the HRA purposes, we sold that at what we believed our, the current value of that was, which was a $5,000.
Any direction needed for that?
Well, I don't, I would guess there would have to be direction given, because right now it's going to the auction. So if we're going to change that, we need to say,
Yes.
offer it to the school district for X number of dollars.
Yeah, or a minimum of X, yes.
Exactly. And if they aren't
Deadline?
interested, then it goes to the auction.
Would you put a deadline on it?
Well, deadline would be
Friday at 1 p.m. is when
Friday
the
at
auction
1
is
p.m.
scheduled to
I
start.
mean, you can withdraw it at the last minute. Can you not?
We certainly can, but this is your meeting to give us direction to change the
Oh, no, I
course of
understand
action.
that.
Yes.
But what he's talking about is a deadline
For the school
for
to
the
act on
school.
their side.
So if we said the deadline for the school is 1 o'clock, and if they haven't made their decision by that time, then it goes to the auction.
If that's your will.
Councilman Federer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What exactly are we talking about here? Is it a snowmobile that pulls a sled, or is it an all-inclusive?
I'll let the Public Works Director kind of detail the equipment.
The equipment that we're talking about is the snowmobile, along with all of the attachments that are included with that, which does include the grooming trailer and any additional attachments that belong to that snowmobile. And the total of those together, the depreciated value, is $5,000. So,
Can't we just transfer it to the community ed department and let them do what they want to do with it?
We had discussed that, and I cannot recall if they were interested in doing that. Or again, that's a transfer to the school.
I guess the best answer would be that this piece of equipment did go through the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Committee. We discussed how the best way to deal with this piece of equipment, knowing that there was a request from the Nordic Ski Club, like City Administrator Charlene explained. The we cannot do the transfer to a private entity such as the ski club. So the next option was the school district. We did not really look into doing with the community ed and rec because it didn't seem like it would be saving the city any money that way, because we would be doing maintenance on the piece of equipment still, so.
We could transfer it to them, and they could sell it, couldn't they?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Robert does.
Yeah. Community ed and recreation is a subset of the school district.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist by itself. You're still transferring it free then to the school district. That's one of your options, because they're a public entity.
And we're 50-50 with community ed.
Correct.
This is true.
No.
Further discussion or a motion?
I'm trying to cooperate and come up with the best way to do it, and I don't, just talking openly, and so Rick said we're 50-50, and if we're 50-50, I don't know, I'm trying to come up with a way to facilitate this. If we're 50-50, would it be fair to say that we'd offer it for a minimum of $2,500 to the school district? I'm looking for feedback from the council members, because I think staff has already told us if we want to set a minimum, we can set a minimum, right?
You could, yes, you can do that. You can set a minimum, you can set, so, again, the direction this had come through on our vehicle replacement, on our vehicle, and when we were reducing the number of vehicles and was scheduled for auction. We certainly do understand where the ski club is coming from. It's not, but our recommendation was based upon this is not a piece of equipment that the city uses, and so the maintenance and the expense, the maintenance and the operation costs. I mean, this was a way for us to reduce the size of our fleet and some of our expenditures. If you wish us to transfer it to the school district, we can, they have the athletic department of the school district expressed interest in obtaining the equipment.
They did.
Yes.
I guess where I was going was, if we set a minimum of $2,500 and they decide they want to wait until the auction, they can do that, or if they want to purchase it for $2,500, they can do so.
Would you like to make that a motion?
Sure. That's the best way to test it, I guess.
Second. A motion has been made, see if I have this right. A motion has been made and seconded to offer to the school for a minimum of $2,500 a piece of equipment. Would you describe that again for us?
Describe it as the Scandic snowmobile and grooming equipment.
Thank you. And that's just a plain motion?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, is there more discussion? Councilman Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who uses the trails that are groomed now? Is it everybody, or is it's okay. So it's kind of a quality of life issue in the wintertime up here, so it does get used. Yeah. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, got another one.
Councilman Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we had sold it for $5,000, would they actually have paid us $5,000, or would they have paid us $2,500?
I don't know I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not sure that we will now.
All right, so then if we sell it for $2,500, are they going to give us $1,250?
Well, no, I mean, I think the motion that you just made, if I understood it, was to offer it to them for $2,500. If they're not willing to pay that, it will go to auction.
And we'll get the $2,500. We're not going to.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the motion was for a minimum of $2,500.
That's right.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. It will be offered to the school for $2,500. Any further open forum? Willmar City Council open forum. If not, we'll move on to the next proclamation, the National Travel and Tourism Week. Would you like to do that for us, Charlene?
Sure. If the council, you have before you a proclamation regarding travel and tourism, National Travel and Tourism Week. I can read that proclamation if it's your desire to have that read.
Yes.
Okay. Whereas travel to and within Minnesota provides significant economic benefits for the state annually, generating $11.3 billion in gross sales spent directly by travelers, totaling more than $31 million a day. Whereas travel is among the largest private sector employers in Minnesota each year, supporting 235 full and part-time jobs, which equals $4 billion in wages and totals 11% of the total private sector employment. Revenue generated from travelers spending equates to $732 million in state sales tax annually and totals 17% of total state tax revenues. These funds are used to support essential services and programs. Whereas revenue generated from travel in Candy, Ojai County in 2010 generated $72,751,406 in gross sales and $4,534,222 in sales tax and contributed 1,584 jobs. Whereas meetings, events, and incentive travel are core business functions that help companies strengthen business performance, averaging a return on investment of $12.50 in profits and $3.80 in revenue for every dollar spent on corporate travel, align and educate employees and customers, and reward business accomplishments. Whereas leisure travel, which accounts for more than 3/4 of all trips taken in the United States, spurs countless benefits to travelers' creativity, cultural awareness, education, happiness, productivity, relationships, and wellness. The City Council of the City of Willmar, Minnesota acknowledges travel to Willmar and Candy, Ojai County is a catalyst that moves the area's economy forward. Be it resolved that Frank Yanish, Mayor of Willmar, does hereby proclaim May 5th through 13th, 2012 as Travel and Tourism Week in Willmar, Minnesota, and urges the citizens of Willmar to join in this special observance with celebrating the benefits that tourism brings to our community by wearing red on Tuesday, May 8th in recognition of National Tourism Day.
Thank you very much. That's tomorrow. Red.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
if I may, the Convention and Visitors Bureau has made up many red T-shirts. I purchased a couple of them the other day that proclaims, I think it's Tourism Works or something like that, and I believe there's still some available at their office, which is in the Chamber building out there. And you'll see me wearing one tomorrow, rain or shine.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Charlene. At this particular time, we will have the report from Bar Engineering. Holly, would you like to introduce these folks?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, community members. Tonight we have Bar Engineering here to present the watershed management plan that they had prepared. You'll find that this presentation is very similar to the one that was done about a year ago. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to refresh your ideas and refresh the information that was given a year ago. There was no action required tonight by the council to adopt the plan. That'll come before you at the next council meeting after you hear the presentation and are able to answer questions tonight. So I would like to introduce Steve Klein and Greg Williams of Bar Engineering.
Thank you, Holly. I might just point out that after the presentation, we will entertain a few questions at that particular point if there are some. Thank you.
I've brought one of my colleagues with me tonight just in case I lose my voice. I'm suffering a little bit from remnants of some pneumonia, so forgive me if I lose my voice. My astute colleague will take over for me, no problem. Thank you again for having me here tonight. I've met most of you. I have not met your administrator until just now. But yeah, as Holly mentioned, I'm here to provide you a little bit of a refresher of what we covered by way of discussion last year about the same time. We've also were asked to prepare the information that we had provided to you last year at this time, to incorporate that into your overall surface water management plan. And that was done in addition to upgrading it to accommodate some of the new requirements that you will be faced with for your, what's called the MS4 permit from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And so that had been kind of waiting a little bit until we got better indication of where PCA was going with their next permit, which is a 4-year permit for the city. And we've upgraded the plan to incorporate some of those considerations so that you operate under conditions that are compliant with your requirements from the Pollution Control Agency. But so tonight I'm here to present your plan, and you have, each of you have hard copies of our PowerPoint slides, and you're welcome to jot notes down and whatever. I'll follow that very closely. And as Holly has mentioned, this is very similar to the presentation that I provided you a couple of years ago, and I think it is important for you to kind of revisit this perhaps annually as you're proceeding through implementation of your surface water management plan. But your plan basically covers two major elements: water quantity, flooding, pipe capacity issues, things like that, as well as water quality. The major focus of the plan has been on water quantity issues, or your flooding issues, because they remain to be very complex and chronic, especially in the southeast quadrant of town. And so the majority of my presentation is going to cover much of that sort of flooding issues. Again, from a water quantity standpoint, issues involve flooding as well as pipe and ditch capacities, which you're all very familiar with living here. To give you an idea of some of the complexity, the city of Willmar is this area shown in red. All of the red here, not over here, that's Candy Ojai, but this is the city of Willmar. And what you see outside of the city of Willmar is the total watershed area that one way or the other impacts the city. And in particular, the southeast quadrant of town drains via County Ditch 23 down to Lake Wakanda and Little Candy Ojai Lake. You're right on the border of, or on the watershed divide of two flows going in two directions. Flows from the southeast quadrant of town going through Candy Ojai and Lake Wakanda ultimately drain to the Crow River and then to the Mississippi. Drainage from the westerly part of town, including drainage that outlets out of Foot Lake, drains to the southwest and actually ends up in the Minnesota River. And so you're right on the top of a watershed divide here. But we have a real problem, especially in the southeast quadrant of town, with very chronic flooding. And what this map shows is just how extensive flooding is throughout the southeast quadrant of town. All the areas shown in light blue are areas that are impacted by 100-year flooding. Areas shown in yellow stars are areas that have chronic flooding that have been noted by the city and with a strong desire to correct them, including one of the areas that one of your residents talked about just before I came up. Now, the city hasn't just been resting and not doing things over the years. I was here in 1999 presenting a surface water management plan that we had prepared for you at that time. And so you prepared a plan in 1999. you've established stormwater ordinance and policies that deal with water quantity, water quality, issues that meet what's the NPDES requirements or your MS4 requirements. These are just acronyms, but they're water quality requirements that Pollution Control Agency has placed on virtually all cities within the state of Minnesota. And you tried to limit post-development discharge for any new development areas to no worse than what would have existed prior to that development. You've also had a general policy for if there's fill within a floodplain, that whoever is proposing to fill within that floodplain provides compensatory excavation. So if they put a spoon of dirt in the floodplain here, they have to remove it in some place in close proximity. And you've had a process of emergency flood response by your emergency teams, including your police and fire departments. But the majority of these actions so far have mostly been focused on really not making the situation worse than exists. And so you've focused on things to make sure that we don't worsen the problems that, for example, the 4 major key areas that you've probably heard about on numerous occasions, the 10th Street, Candy Ojai Avenue flooding area, Robbins Avenue Southwest, 7th Street and 15th Avenue, 8th Street and 15th Avenue. But we haven't really focused on what we could do to further improve or mitigate that flooding. And so the city asked the former Public Works Director, what can we do by way of pipes and ponds to try to correct these problems? And we were then charged by you through Mel Odens to determine what might be able to be done. And quite frankly, as you're going to hear, I'm not here with a big aha moment for you. You have a very, very complex issue, and there isn't a cheap fix for any of it. But there are things that we can do to make things better, all of which come with a fairly significant price tag. And this is the same message that I presented a year ago as well. To give you an understanding, when you looked at that picture with all those blue blotches, if you take all of that volume of runoff for just the southeast quadrant of town, that's the equivalent of 337 acres, 1 foot deep of water, that much volume. It's a huge amount of water. To give you another idea of just to visualize what that would mean, if you take Swan Lake here just to the north, that would be the equivalent of 18 inches of water on Swan Lake, or a foot of water over half of a square mile. A large amount of water. And the causes of water to pond and not flow away are many. It's very complex, as I've mentioned. We have very flat terrain. We have increased runoff from impervious surfaces as the city continues to grow and you allow more development. The increase of impervious area increases the runoff, and that has systematically over the years increased the flood volumes as well. Much of the city's storm sewer system was designed and built in an era that had a different flood design for or conveyance design for storm sewers. It was not common for cities that developed in the 1920s, 30s, 40s to have storm sewers that really could only handle about a 1-year to 5-year event. Currently, most cities are trying to upsize their level of service for their piping systems to be more in the range of a 10-year event. And you need to know that your total system is not just those pipes that are underground. Your total system includes your pipes, includes the curbs and gutters that water flows in, the overflow drainage ways, and your ponds. All of those are parts of a storm sewer system. And well-planned systems have the flooding and and how they convey flooding via those systems without major impact to the residents and businesses. Unfortunately, you have some of those areas that do impact residents, businesses, and public safety due to flood depth and volume. In addition, there have been very few detention basins that were ever designed and built in the southwest quadrant of town, given the size of the area that we're dealing with and the amount of development. You also have very tight soils, and as a result, you don't have a strong infiltration capacity of the soils because there's clay and silty soils. You have a high groundwater problem. You all know how high the water is within town. And you have a big tailwater issue as well. And what tailwater is if you have a pool of water and you're discharging water into it, that pool of water becomes an impediment for this water to flow into. Well, in terms of tailwater, let me give you a little picture here, and this is on your handout. This is just simply a profile view. This bottom line is the ditch profile of County Ditch 23 from 4th Street Southeast through the Waterview Park, through the Highway 71 bypass, all the way down to the inlet to Lake Wakanda. And the outlet to Lake Wakanda is right here. Currently, there's standing water in that entire ditch system from the outlet of Lake Wakanda all the way up to and into the city. That is a constant tailwater impact. So getting back to that list of complex issues, when you combine all of those, you have so many things working against you that a lot of cities don't have. This becomes much more complex for this city than a lot of other towns. And to give you a kind of an understanding, I like to use this, especially for this city, I like to use this analogy of each street intersection as being kind of a beaker that can hold water in a very flat terrain. Very flat terrain, you got homes around, and each intersection, before a storm hits, there's no water above ground, there's no water standing in any of those intersections, but we do know that there is, in places in town, standing water in some of the pipes because we have that tailwater impact. But before any sort of storm, you don't have any water standing on the ground. But then we get a 100-year event or something smaller, something bigger, and water flows via storm sewers first, and when the storm sewers can't handle it, it flows by curbs and gutters to intersections and maybe to overflow points. And when they get to intersections, they often flood because some of the intersections are low points. And so this is very common to what's happening right now. And all of those, most of the blue blotches that I showed on that previous map are not isolated flooding areas that are autonomous to themselves. They are all interconnected and act as one large lake, partly above ground, partly below ground. And so as water goes into the system, you may have a vast majority flowing into this pipe, but these are all interconnected. And as flooding occurs in a lot of the intersections and other areas in town, it kind of floods as one big lake. And so the flood level in a lot of the northerly most part of the southeast quadrant of town is all the same elevation in each of those blue blotch areas. So it all acts as one large lake. So that being the case, what can you do? Well, one thing is we can add some more detention in areas where you might have available open areas, such as some of the school playground areas, some of the open areas like the former wastewater treatment plant site where the plant is now removed and you might be able to do some detention. So you can put in some detention there, and that reduces the flooding, but you can put it anywhere you want. It will impact all of that flooding as one big lake. It doesn't just deal with an intersection. And so you can place flood detention in various locations. It will decrease flooding, but it decreases it sort of uniformly over the entire system and not just at a particular location. So that's one option that could be done. Second option is to take those flooding areas and provide additional pipes that discharge water downstream. The problem that you have here in Willmar is when we do that, we may reduce flooding in these areas, but we chase it downstream and we increase flooding for the next area downstream. Something that we have modeled, and I will talk about that in more detail as I get into the very specifics. Or we can actually provide extra pipes and extra detention that reduces some more of the flooding, but it chases more of it downstream. And so we really don't alleviate any sort of issue with very easily or inexpensively with doing some interconnecting pipes and ponds. So in order to analyze that, though, we need a very detailed computer model and to build and to analyze the system for the city. And what we've used is what's called the XP SWIM model. It can model watersheds where you have flow in multiple directions, which actually happens here in town. You'll have flow going in pipes one way, you'll have it exiting pipes through catch basins and flowing out onto roads, you'll have it going down one street, getting into a system, and then coming back other directions. Very complex flow. This model can actually model that. And so the first thing we did is we built a model of the entire city, and it requires an immense amount of input, and it's all based on information we've had and been provided by your staff and other resources. But we don't, when we initially build it, we don't know how accurate it is until we calibrate it. And we've had 2 storms that we were able to use to calibrate that model, and one was the August 26th storm in 2005, and another one was a 1-inch event that happened over a 30-minute period more recently. And we were able to use aerial photography, NEXRAD data, survey of debris lines, and discussions with homeowners to know exactly where water rose to in each of those events. And then we input those rainfall events into our model to see if our modeled result would match what actually was recorded here for those storms. And we found that it matched almost identically. So we know that the model was validated and very modeling the city very well. And so we then could use that model to analyze some of these pipe and pond options that I talked about. Now there's many approaches that can be looked at, and we analyzed 7 alternatives to trying to reduce flooding within key areas of town. And as I said at the beginning of my presentation, there is no simple fix that's simple and inexpensive. The first two alternatives that we looked at. We looked at trying to develop detention in available open areas, which included the Kennedy, some of the fields and open area around the Kennedy School, the area west of Menards, increasing flood capabilities at the Ramblewood Slough area, the former wastewater treatment plant site, and Garfield School. Those those two alternatives, we also looked at increasing the city's storm sewer system from a 1 to 2 year event under what it currently can manage up through a 10-year level of service. And we also looked at infiltration capabilities as well. Alternative 1, this is just an example of, well, and it's showing where we were planning to provide additional detention, and that's each one of these cross-hatched red areas, this being the former wastewater treatment plant site, Ramblewood Slough, the area just west of Menards, etc. All of the yellow stars are areas where chronic flooding has been a problem, and all of the blue is where there's some degree of chronic significant flooding or at least nuisance flooding. Alternative 2 expanded on building those detention areas that I talked about in alternate 1 by increasing the trunk sewer systems to a 10-year level of service. And what we found in those two alternatives is that the available space, open space, wasn't particularly well suited for trying to really help the flooding on itself, because in many cases it was away from the real flood problems, and we still needed to get that water over to those areas in order to try to help mitigate flooding. And so we identified that without any sort of upsizing of the trunk sewer systems, building any of those retention areas would have very limited impact completely. Also, we found that infiltration just is not something that really works well here in town because of the tight soils and the high groundwater levels. So based on the conclusions of alternatives 1 and 2, we looked at 5 other alternatives. The first of those alternatives, we said, okay, let's put in a pipe system big enough to take all of the 100-year event. And so we looked at upsizing all of your trunk system so that it would take 100% of the 100-year event. And if we did that, what we found is we could basically eliminate the flooding problems in all of these parts of town. But what we did do is we chased the water downstream to a place where that would cause problems for Menards, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, Candy Mall, and a variety of other businesses. So chasing it downstream doesn't help us a whole lot in that regard. And those pipes would be big honking pipes, almost bigger than your roads could handle. And that doesn't even consider other things that you put in your roads, such as sewers, sanitary sewer, water, gas, and other things. So very large conduits, very expensive conduits, but we can get rid of that flooding under this approach, but it gets down and causes some major problems for some of your major commercial entities. So we took a look at alternate number 4, and that was to place this 100-year flood pipes in your trunk system and to develop additional flood detention over here west of Menards. And that actually reduced the flood level within the area around all of those major commercial enterprises, but not enough to result in any major reduction that they would not be concerned about. We looked at an alternate number 5 where we did the 100-year pipes and provide a large detention area in what's called Grass Lake to the south and east of town. And what we found very similar is we could reduce the flooding within the northerly part of the southwest or southeast quadrant of town, but we chased it down, and we still are having problems down here for a lot of the major commercial enterprises. So alternative 6, we looked at providing detention in Grass Lake as well as over to the west of Menards, and that had a major impact where we could reduce all of the flooding within the northerly part of the southeast quadrant of town, and we'd reduce the flooding in and around all of the major commercial businesses in town and not have any major problems with those. But as you'll see, that comes with not only big pipe, but a very, very, very big price tag. So we looked at a 7th alternative, and that was to do something to a little less extent than what we were looking at with the 100-year pipes, and that was just simply converting your trunk system to 10-year level of service, installing the key flood detention in areas where there's available open space, and providing the necessary interconnecting pipes between these additional detention areas so that we can get the water to those and actually have them work in a timely fashion. And that alternate 7, as you'll see, is what we recommend in our plan and what we recommended a year ago when we were here. And to give you an idea of what that does, this is just a graphic that shows flooding at various intersections and locations in town. Alternative 7 at 10th and Candy Ojai would lower the 100-year flood level by 1.4 feet. At 8th and 15th, it would lower the flooding at that location by 0.9 feet. At 7th and 15th by 1, and on down the line. It has no impact on the flood levels down at Lake Wakanda. And just so you know, some people have raised the question, well, can't we pursue maybe lowering the level at Lake Wakanda? We did an analysis where we just assumed a complete free discharge at the southeast boundary of town and assumed we didn't have any tailwater at all, and we still ran into the flooding problems that you have in the north, the majority of the southeast quadrant of town. So doing something down at Lake Wakanda is not going to alleviate your flooding problems in town. So all of those 7 options are provided here by way of a summary in terms of an opinion of cost. Alternative 1, which just takes your storm sewer system and improves it by placing detention areas, has very low flood impact and comes with a price tag of around $13 million. Alternative 2, where you increase the pipe level of service to a 10-year event plus incorporate detention at available open areas, comes with a price tag of around $37 million. The one option where we would just place in 100-year pipes and no additional downstream detention would be about $31 million, but again, that's chasing water into the doors and buildings of Home Depot, Target, Candy Mall, all of those commercial enterprises. And so you have high flood impact on the upstream side. You also cause major high impact on the downstream side of the city there. Alternative 5 comes with a price tag of around $58 million. Alternative 6, which alleviates all the flooding, comes at a price tag of about $79 million. Alternative 7, which is the one that we recommend if you proceed with pipe and pond options, would be around $40 million. So as you can see, there is no easy and inexpensive fix for this, especially given the complexity of the system. And as a result, that information was incorporated into your surface water management plan, and with it came a variety of recommendations. One, to try to get detention wherever you possibly can, and one of the key focal points is the wastewater treatment plant site because it's available and it's right on the main stem of your discharge system. We also think that, okay, we've analyzed pipes and ponds, but we haven't analyzed and done a complete flood risk assessment or feasibility study for all of the different options that we have. And the other things that we haven't looked at are flood proofing of homes or simply buying them out and moving them out of the floodplain. And that is something that we're recommending that the city do that study and direct your public works staff to start that analysis. We also believe that you should establish a more rigorous emergency flood response action that your emergency staff visits and considers on an annual basis, so they're aware of it annually. And for example, where do you go and place barricades? When should you be doing it? What type? How much rain do we need to get out and put these things in place, etc. There's also some of your ordinances that were written in 1999 that are that need to be improved or revised to accommodate the water quality requirements that you're facing now, in addition to trying to deal with the flooding issues here. We're recommending that you upgrade your entire system as you do road improvements to tear up your bituminous when that becomes deteriorated. We recommend that's the time to be installing 10-year pipe in that same area. Eventually, systematically bringing your entire system up to your flood system, your trunk system, up to a 10-year event. We're also recommending that you enroll in the National Flood Insurance Program. That does not mean, we're not recommending that you have a flood insurance study done for the city. We're recommending that you enroll your city in a flood insurance program. That's a voluntary program, and what it enables you as a city and your residents to do is purchase flood insurance, especially for chronic flooding areas, at a much, much lower price than anybody would pay if you just went to other entities such as Lloyd's of London, etc. We want you to take a much more aggressive approach at no net filling within your floodplains. If somebody proposes to fill within a floodplain, they need to provide compensatory excavation so they're not causing and making a situation worse than presently exists. And we would strongly suggest that you discourage any development within the floodplain areas. So that deals largely with all of the water quantity issues. You also have some water quality issues that are becoming more and more significant for the city to be considering. I don't know if any of you have heard the acronym TMDL. It's total maximum daily load limit of pollutants such as nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, sediment in terms of total suspended solids, and other things that that just flow off of the land. There are several impaired waters that have already been listed as impaired, including Lake Wakanda. And there are TMDL studies that are being done by the Pollution Control Agency right now. And they will be coming and knocking on the doors of all of the tributary watershed areas and requesting that people limit their discharges of pollutants to a certain daily amount. And so this issue of water quality is going to become more and more significant as your own lakes are identified as being impaired, or the downstream lakes or the downstream streams are listed as being impaired. You will be attending much more of your time and financial efforts to trying to improve those things. And so we strongly recommend that you need to look at areas that are not developed right now and try to plan for water quality improvement in those areas. And the reason for that is very simple. There's been many studies that have shown that if you try to do water quality and retrofit a part of town that's already developed and you do water quality improvements in that area, it costs about 20 times more than it would to take open land areas and develop water quality treatment in those locations. And so key areas that we really want you to think about are the wastewater treatment plant site, the area west of Menards, and I'm a big advocate on it, Grass Lake. That is one area that has strong potential for water quality improvement. And I know that the city has had some sort of stonewalling from the Pollution Control Agency. But I think that we, being the city, your staff, you, perhaps us as your consultants or whoever you might choose, can prevail upon the Pollution Control Agency to ensure that you get credit for water quality if you contribute to the payment for creating water quality improvement within Grass Lake. And so that's something that I believe in, and I think you should be looking at that. I know you've run into major issues with PCA in the past. I think those are not insurmountable, and we strongly recommend it because of cost. In conclusion, your wastewater or your water management plan provides a roadmap for your future stormwater management activities, both water quantity and water quality. It provides useful information for the city to focus its efforts in the future and its capital improvement programs. Presents water quality and water quantity issues, provides an implementation program to address identified issue areas, and it recommends alternate number 7 of the 7 options that we looked at providing you. So with that, I'll open up for any questions that you might have of me.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
And I will open it up to the public for questions if there are any. Now's the time. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Sir, what percentage of the city of Willmar are we draining to the south?
I'm sorry, you need to come to the microphone, please, to ask the question. It is being recorded.
Hi, I'm Joe Riddler. I'm with the Stormwater Task Force. My question is, Steve, how many, what percentage of the city of Willmar do we drain to the southeast? 70, 60%? Do you know?
I would say in a range of half, because there's a huge amount of Willmar that drains through your lake complex and then into the Hawk Creek district to the south and west. It's around
55%?
50%, something in that range. If you need that number, we certainly can get it. I don't have it tonight.
It'd be interesting. The county just had a meeting. They were talking about having you folks do another study for them. They just allocated, I think it was about $65,000 for a study for y'all. In that, you were going to do a study with building a dam and seeing what the benefits of us having a pump to help lift water. So that draws a question to me, and I apologize I didn't have this report prior to the meeting. What amount of water, being you're talking about backwater, which we know we have flow back from the watershed from Lake Wakanda back into the city of Willmar, ditch 23A, what percentage of our pipes is full of water all the time? Because you're telling me we got backwater, so on your estimation, are we talking 20%, 10%, 30% full?
Of your pipes. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Of your pipes, I would say it's in the range of maybe 10, but that's not just your entire system. You have ditches as well, and those have standing water in them, which
is flowing back.
Includes, yeah, at certain times of the storm.
We got water coming into our city too.
You do, but we also, that was something that we did model, and we found that for at least the 100-year event, we're not finding great amounts that are backflowing from, let's call it the greater watershed that's downstream. It does back up into the very southern southeast part of the southeast quadrant, but not as extensively as we have heard through certain anecdotal comments that we've been provided by various members of the city here over the years. But we do show that there is some backing up of water at certain times of the storm. Not as extensively as we had heard it might have.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, the study, we're not doing another study. We're doing the next phase of a water quality study. This is water quality. This is not a flood study for
I misunderstood.
for that subwatershed, and it's to look at the water quality of the drainage area coming into Grass Lake, and to perhaps not utilize the entire area as some of the previous studies were. It would be using a lesser amount of area, and with the idea of not impacting the city at all by placing some berms within that area. And so that's the next phase of that study, and that's what we were provided just in the last week, signed copies of that.
Okay. Yeah, Lauren's done a beautiful job with that project for the last 20 years, it seems. The other thing, when you talk about removing houses, we had talked about that at one of our meetings, and we elected at that time to hold off on that study. Now you're telling us that maybe we should be spending some time on that study because of the dollar factor of the overall, which you came out with the results.
Yes. We didn't recommend that you hold off on that study, but people wanted to know. Nobody likes to move people out of homes or do massive flood control or flood improvements, flood proofing rather, of homes if you don't need to. And if there's a viable option through pipes, ponds, and redirection of flows, those are typically things that most cities like to deal with in that fashion. But when there seems to be no other alternative that's viable, or that the other alternatives are very expensive, then we suggest that at least you look at it and understand what that overall cost would be to purchase homes or to flood-proof homes and to weigh that against some of these other costs for these pipe and pond options that we looked at.
And that study was roughly about, Holly, was that about 35,000? Was it more than that? Was that the other one about 60? Was that the other one about 65,000? Okay, okay. So, there you go. We can do some of that, maybe by, guess, by golly, where we see the low spots.
Joe, can I get you to,
Talking to Mike a little better, or what?
no, to sum it up just a little bit? I want to see if some of the other people have
Yeah,
questions.
the other
and I-
question, the gentleman had made a comment about the ditch along the old treatment plant. Holly, we did just a clean out of that ditch, correct? And then, I didn't know we burned. I'm a little confused on that. I thought we just did a clean out of that so we had better water flow. Is that dirt not been excavated or leveled, or are we leaving it as a berm, or
We did not berm it. We just cleaned it out.
it's just so the project isn't completed yet? I was just,
Yeah, the project is complete. I believe if I understood the gentleman's comment is he had thought we were going to berm it and we did not berm it, which was the intent, was to not berm that.
okay. All righty, thank you.
Thanks, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? Go ahead, come on up to the microphone.
That's what I understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Morris, and I just had an idea that I want to propose, especially to Bar Engineering. Something that I've noticed throughout the city of Willmar, as I've lived here, is that the city is growing, it's not really shrinking, and so relocating homes as though it seems makes sense for the floodplain. Doesn't seem very in line with like the city's goals, especially with the expansion of construction over in that area behind Walmart and the new streets back there. I mean, there's a lot of new growth area for businesses to come, and I think that's a great idea, something that should be pursued, but it's right in that area that people are looking at. Some of these alternatives are looking at dumping a lot of that water. And so my idea was just a question of Bar Engineering about the feasibility of taking some of this money possibly and bringing it and using the former wastewater treatment center plant, since you said it was centrally located in a lot of the major floodplain areas, which is actually right behind my house. And using that facility, since it does already have the pipes and locations there, to pay or maybe even bring in a company to kind of remove that water, because the big X factor question that we're kind of looking at is what do you do with 100 million gallons of water? And I think a lot of the problem right now is the fact that it won't drain because we have that tailwater problem and so forth. There seems to be a lot of sitting water around the city. So if we were to start removing it now, even though it's not raining today, then removing it continuously to sites such as possibly the Minnesota River or where else, I don't know for sure about that, but if you have a continuous use of the former site to drain out, and if you're continually draining, then the city seems more prepared with because due to the soil, a lot of it's not going to drain very well into the soil, but if you're already emptying out the sitting water underneath the roads and so forth, then it seems to me it might be possible to have the city more prepared to take a 50-year event if it doesn't have that tailwater problem that's already sitting there. And just how that would work with taking care of that solution and kind of, because right now if you have water in the lake that's kind of already present, the water won't drain there. I mean, it's a law of physics. But if we start removing that, the problem of that water that's already sitting there, already located within the city, it might create a vacancy for coming rainwaters. So that was just something that I wanted to propose or maybe bring up as a discussion topic for solving this problem, because that seems to be the problem, is that since Willmar is growing, this problem seems to be something that will there will be less areas to drain to, is I guess what I'm alluding to. But if we start taking care of that problem of the sitting water now, then it creates an opportunity for Willmar to continue expanding. And if it were a successful project, then the more Willmar expands and the less area has to drain to, the more such companies, or if that were a successful option, or a viable option even, the more opportunity there would be to expand and grow within the city. So that was just something that I wanted to propose.
Thank you for your comments. Any future or further discussion from the public? If not, I would like to bring it to the council. Councilman Ahman?
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for your report. It's been long awaiting. I know the county recently in the paper, there was a quote in the newspaper that said that the county was disappointed that we're not participating with the Grass Lake project. I can attest to sitting in meetings approximately 20 years ago, and we were thoroughly excited about the idea to finally alleviate some of our stormwater issues and quality issues. And your comment is especially about the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, I think it's astounding, because that's where I think the direction should be also. If we can get the stormwater credits, we should be able to move forward and participate in the program. That, I think, is going to be a given. And I often thought, why is the PCA ramming this down our throat that we're not going to get stormwater credits? There must be some way of negotiating with them. And when you came up here tonight and mentioned that, it's like, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. That's probably one of the first actions that should be taken. Another thing that we talked about in the past, talked to the stormwater task force that we've had working for the last couple of years, was the issue of underground storage facilities for commercial and industrial development. That means this can be an additional cost to them, and we might have to consider that, since in a lot of cases there's no room for ponding on these open sites. But it should be considered and it should be reviewed, and I think that should go to the Planning Commission as soon as possible. In fact, we maybe should have started this process a long time ago. I've referred it to Bruce Peterson. I know I'm talking about it, but at this time there wasn't any immediate urgency. But seeing what you've explained to us tonight, I think it is urgent, and we have to move on it. The other issue on the old dump site too, just for everybody's information, that was discussed. The council discussed, let's take the old treatment plant and dig that area out, but we have the old dump site there, and that could be very expensive cleaning up. And that's a good time for collaboration with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to see what we can do there. I think that is one, some of the few steps that we should get initiated before we move on with the large multi-million-dollar projects, at least to attack some of those items at first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Councilman Bleak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned some of the water quality issues in our water quality ordinances. Exactly how far can we go with the water quality ordinances? I know there's concern with the Willmar Lake Basin, the north and the south basin of Foot Lake. We have a number of infiltration points that come into that lake where I can take you up there right now and show you where the storm sewer coming off, and mainly off in private property, is running just chocolate colored black. And we haven't been able to address that. Particulates coming into the lake at this point. Do we need to enforce or change our ordinance to be able to enforce that, or can we do that under current ordinance?
You can get at that to a certain extent under your current ordinance. I think you need more meat in your ordinance, and you're going to need more meat into it because of this very issue that we're continuing to send pollutants and contaminants to our vital water resources, and they're not going to get better unless we do things to improve that. And right now, I'm dealing with cities that have improved their ordinances, and we're in the process of doing massive cleaning out of ponds and detention areas that were built years ago. Another thing that's on the forefront of issues with cleaning out any of these ponds for water quality is what are called polyaromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, a lot of which are coal-driven. And when people seal coat their driveways, this isn't something that's usually used by your city to seal coat your roads. Those are more oil-based. But some of the biggest problems are using coal-based driveway sealers, and those come with carcinogen compounds that are impacting our waters, the aquatic wildlife within those waters as well. And so that becomes very expensive too. And to clean up a pond that has polyaromatic hydrocarbons as opposed to ones that don't. A normal excavation of a pond might cost $10 a cubic yard to dig up sediment that's accumulated and to discharge that someplace and reuse it. If you have to haul something like that to a landfill because it's highly contaminated, it may be in a range of 70 to 100 cubic, or $100 a cubic yard. Vastly more expensive. One of the things that I would like to see is a general idea of trying to outlaw, or at least not recommend using polyaromatic hydrocarbon sealers on roadways within town, on driveways, things like that. Improving your ordinance to target specific performance criteria for treatment, and not just meeting the pollution control agency's minimum standards for new development. Things like that, I really appreciate your water. The lakes that you have, they're some of the prettiest lakes around. And they're not all that terribly bad right now, but they're getting worse. And as you develop towards that part of the town more and continue, those lakes are going to be focused on with pollutants. And so I think now is the time to be trying to improve that.
Councilman Doctor? Are you?
Yeah, right.
Councilman Doctor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
I want to talk you've already talked about flood risk assessment feasibility study. You talk about flood proofing, buyout and removal. We have a lot of older homes and properties in southeast Willmar, and that's where you identified the major problem. How expensive is something like that, and what sort of results do we see from that?
When you're asking how expensive is that, are you talking about the study, or are you talking about the
actually removing a home and turning it into a rain garden, or what?
Or a big detention area?
Okay.
I don't have the answer to that. That's what the study would be.
Okay.
But it's our belief that certain chronic areas of town, not all areas where there's flooding are major flooding areas. There's flooding that is more like nuisance flooding, where you get your feet wet but it isn't causing any problems. And then there's other areas where people are getting water in the basements, or intersections are flooding to depths where that causes a safety issue. And in these major chronic problem areas, those are areas where you can focus more funds to deal with the specifics of the facilities that are in that one spot. And it's our belief that we'll find through that some of those options are far less expensive than building underground rivers and chasing the water someplace else. Because right now, quite frankly, in most of those areas, that's where the water wanted to go in the first place before development occurred. It's just that, and this isn't pointing a finger at any developer or anybody as this was built, because most of this was built at a time when people didn't even understand flooding, or accepted flooding in a much more regular fashion than we do these days. Back in the 1920s, 1930s, people accepted flooding and said, okay, we're going to get flooded out every once in a while. We don't accept that anymore because things have gotten so unbelievably expensive. So I think you do need to look at some of these other options, and where it makes sense, perhaps implement those plans as opposed to some of the more expensive ones.
Thank you.
Further discussion or comments? Councilman Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your report. Isn't a major problem the speed at which the water is moving once it hits the ground? The rain isn't the problem. It's just that we're funneling it faster and faster all the time, replacing ditches with culverts and storm water. is there some way to slow the water down, like before it hits 10th and Candy High, 6 blocks away, 8 blocks away, 10 blocks away? Isn't there something that could be done? I mean, I don't know how you would dam it or slow it down, but isn't there something that could be done to slow that water down?
Let me answer it as easily as I can. There is some things that you can do to slow it down, but the problem is, remember, all those areas, all those blue blotches are interconnected by pipe. And even if you slow it down here, the water comes back up, and in talking with one of your residents today, they see water coming out of catch basins and out of the sewers and flooding an area anyway. So you can still do something up there, but it comes in through the back door, back through the pipes, and comes up. It's very complex, and so just looking at, if you had really nice soils, sandy soils, I'd be telling you a different story right now, because we could maybe be looking at some major infiltration. But you have a combination of tight soils and a very high water table. One of the councilmen just mentioned possibly placing underground tanks to detain water. You have a proposal with you that your staff are reviewing right now for a development in town that's looking at doing that sort of thing. Problem is the water table is so high, we believe they're looking at trying to get credit for detention that's going to be taken up with just normal groundwater. And so we've got some problems with that as well. And I wish I could tell you there's some simple, easy, let's hold it back just a little longer approach, and it would solve the problem, but it doesn't here. It's much more pervasive than that.
I know that there isn't just one answer. Many things have to be done. There's more than one solution, but the underground storage, I agree, it's not going to work. Even you mentioned as we replace our streets and then the sewer and water that we should build larger storm sewer. Well, it's just going to hold more groundwater. It really isn't going to help.
Well, you have to factor that into your design. And so you're right. If you just put it within the groundwater, you're going to have groundwater there. So you build shallower and wider facilities, and that becomes very problematic.
Expensive, too.
Yes.
Now, when we, this new development out by Walmart in that area, we put a lot of concrete and tar out there, and they put in holding ponds or detention ponds out there. When they design them, do they take into account the amount of water that's just going to be there? Because those things have water in them 365. I mean, it's just, it's always there. Even through a dry spell, there's water there because of our high water table.
Yes. In fact, in those particular cases, the city had BAR review those, and anything that was provided below the water table, they did not get any credit for flood detention for anything that was below the water level.
So that was figured in then? That
was figured into it, and what those ponds did was, when Walmart came, they added a whole bunch more area of imperviousness and increased the runoff. What those ponds did was to create a condition no worse than what existed before Walmart went in. It didn't increase flood detention to deal with other problems in town. All it focused on was to create a condition no worse than what existed prior to Walmart developing.
You'd probably get some people arguing with you about that. I think it has made it worse personally, but then one other item, you said that the lowering Lake Wakanda would have no effect on our floodwaters here. I mean,
it would have some impact in the very southeast quadrant. It does not have virtually any impact 10th and Candy High or any of those other. We completely opened up the floodgate at the southeast corner of town and said, let's just assume for the moment that there is no tailwater. And we have the easy ability to do that in a computer model. We were generating the same flood levels up at 10th at Candy High and all of these other areas where there are major problems. So it isn't for much of the problem area that a lot of your residents and businesses have been knocking on your door about, calling you at various times, it can help, but it is not going to be the solution to the problem.
Well, it looks like the cheapest solution is just to buy the homes and move them out. I mean, $40 million, your seventh alternative, you know, where are we going to get the $40 million?
Well, some of that seventh alternative is just doing what you're doing, continuing to do now. When you tear up your, you know, when you need to do a road improvement, you upsize that system then. And so you do it over a period of time during the life of those roadways. So it's not something that you bite the bullet in any 1 year or even in 10 years. But it's a much more systematic approach to just dealing with the overall problem. And you're not going to see immediate results like you might with doing purchase and buyout and move. So it's, you know, I don't like bringing those options up, but I think you as a council realistically need to understand that so you can make the most informed and best decisions that you can.
Thank you.
Councilman Reese?
Is it Steve?
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
okay. I thought I remembered your first name. Going back to some of what Councilmember Christensen was talking about and the no net fill, and you're saying we should be more aggressive. I guess I'd like to know what you mean by more aggressive, because right now it's 1 for 1, right?
Mostly. What we have right now is a policy.
Yep.
And your staff have been administering that policy, but you don't have necessarily the meat that you would with an ordinance update. And if you had somebody that was doing filling illicit or whatever, you would have much more recourse than if you just had a policy.
So changing that to an ordinance.
Changing that and placing it in your ordinance is something that we are recommending that you do.
Okay. The other question, and I just want to understand it, but I think I understand it, but you were saying if we just opened up the southeast part of town, say that there was a big waterfall out there and it just would dump out. The problem that we've got is the size of our piping, which causes the flooding at 10th and Candio High. It might alleviate the problem at Robbins because that's a backup issue, is it not?
I don't know where Robbins is. Refresh my memory.
Robbins Avenue is First and Willmar Avenue, just a little north and west of that.
I don't know if there's backing up in there, but there, in terms of water coming from outside of town into there.
No, that isn't what I think is
Okay.
happening. This is my interpretation, but the size of our pipe in Willmar Avenue that goes to our stormwater discharge, the capacity of that is even reaching a point where it can't get out the end fast enough.
Yes.
So then it backs up into Robbins
Yes.
Avenue.
Yes, the pipes.
And 10th and Candio High, the problem we got is
That's a piping issue.
that's a
too.
piping issue.
And you saw what the costs are for
Right.
corrections using pipes and ponds.
And I thought, you know, I'm one of them that talked to you about, let's just say we dug a big tank underneath Hodap Field and soccer field by Kennedy School, and that the problem we've got there is, number one, it's going to be lower than our discharge, so you can't get it out. Number two is the groundwater issue that you were talking about.
And number three, don't forget, you're dealing with 337 acre feet
Yeah.
of water. A lot of water. And this is much more than a few million gallons. We're talking orders of magnitude more. So when we're talking that much water, you can do things in Kennedy School, you can do things at Garfield School. They help, but they aren't gonna solve everything for you, because we're dealing with so much water.
Well, and we don't have enough fall to get stuff out of town,
Right,
period.
right.
Thank you, Councilman. Holly, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say thank you to Steve and Greg for being here tonight. And also that I know that the report, the hard copy of the report is highly anticipated by several. Bar has informed me that I should expect a copy of the report the end of this week. We'll bring that forward to the Public Works, Public Safety Committee, and we can discuss it further there. And then we'll bring it to council for adoption on the 21st of May. And again, as soon as I get that report, I will distribute it to the council members and to the Stormwater Task Force members.
Thank you again for coming tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry?
could I ask one more question, please?
Sure, go right ahead.
Have you considered, or maybe this is redundant, there's like 20 feet of drop from the city of Candioi to Willmar, is that correct, approximately?
From the city of Candy, Ojai to Willmar? Yes.
Okay. So all of the watershed is coming down that area?
In through Peach Creek and then into Grass Lake, yes.
Yes. Have you considered giving any thought to re-diverting the water? Somehow using the existing ditch structures that we have by Valley Golf Course, or in the ditch area, or further to the outside the city limits, further to the east, to help divert the water over into Grass Lake rather than through the city?
Actually, that water that you're talking about from up at Candy, Ojai, that doesn't come into the city.
Okay.
That just goes via Peach Creek into Grass Lake right now.
Okay.
That's not going into the city. Some people have thought that actually did go into the city and then come back out. It doesn't. It stays on the east side of the bypass.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you,
As far as diverting, though, is there
well, years ago, we looked at, we developed a computer model for the greater watershed area, and we strongly suggested that there's things that could be done to detain flows in all, as a system-wide, watershed-wide approach to the entire drainage area. And the county may consider that at some point. Even if they did that, they really wouldn't be impacting your flooding, because the vast majority of all the water from the south that comes into the southeast quadrant of town resides from the southeast quadrant of town. It doesn't come in from a greater watershed. That's almost that little sub-watershed unto itself. The southeast quadrant generates its runoff from itself and has very little additional tributary area to it. So even if you diverted stuff outside of it, it isn't going to impact the city because it doesn't come in there in the first place.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
What do you say we take a 10-minute break? We are adjourned for 10 minutes.
6 or 7, I'm not sure. I'll call you and let you know.
Okay, we will reconvene 8:46, 8:50. We'll go right into the Finance Committee report for April 23rd, 2012. Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on our agenda was the capital asset policy amendment. Staff explained that a formally written capital assets policy was adopted in July 2011, setting the capitalization thresholds at levels that had been in place for several years. This policy currently requires that items purchased between $350 and $1,000 be recorded on the asset inventory but not capitalized, and items purchased for a minimum of $1,000 be capitalized. Since that time, these thresholds have been reviewed by staff, including a comparison to some other cities. As a result, it's being recommended that these values be increased so that items will be recorded on the inventory but not capitalized for purchases from $1,000 to $5,000, and that items in excess of $5,000 be capitalized. This change would result in cost benefits and savings in staff time required to monitor inventory items. Following discussion, there was a motion made, seconded, and passed, and I would introduce a resolution amending the capital asset policy to the new thresholds of $1,000 to $5,000 for items to be recorded on the asset inventory but not capitalized, and $5,000 or greater for items to be capitalized.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to introduce the resolution amending the capital asset policy to the new thresholds of $1,000 to $5,000 for items to be recorded on the asset inventory but not capitalized, and $5,000 or greater for items to be capitalized. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Darkin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion carries.
The next item was a little discussion on the 2013 budget process. Staff explained that each department director will be presenting their respective proposed 2013 budget requests to the Finance Committee, as well as their annual reports. The schedule will be as follows. On May 14th, we'll be hearing from the City Administrator, Fire Chief, Community Ed and Rec Director, and on May 30th, it'll be the Police Chief, Public Works Director. On June 11th, Planning Director, City Clerk, Finance Director. And on June 25th, Civic Organizations. We requested that Rice Hospital, the MUC, and the HRA present their proposed budgets to the Finance Committee sometime after June 25th. Staff is also working on a final 5-year capital improvement plan, and that'll be presented later this year. It was noted that additional work sessions are anticipated to discuss the street improvement program, fund balances, and other aspects of the budget. This was for information only. The final item was some reports. We received and reviewed the March 31st, 2012 reports. The first quarter interest and dividends by institution, first quarter investment activity, cash investment portfolio, the 10-year history of interest and dividends per quarter, and the 10-year historical investments per quarter. Unless there's questions, I would move to file these minutes.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to file the minutes of the April 23rd, 2012 Finance Committee report. Is there a discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. At this point, we'll go into the Public Works Safety Committee report for April 24th, 2012. Councilman Reese.
Mr. Mayor, I was unable to attend, so Vice Chairman, Councilmember Christensen chaired the meeting, so I'll let him go through the minutes.
Right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Doug. Item number 1 was to approve plans and specs and call for bids for Project 1110, which is the Western Interceptor. Mr. Josh Halverson of Donahue and Associates was there and requested approval of the plans and specs for this project 1110, which is the Western Interceptor sewer connection. The pipe connects to the existing sewer at 30th Street and 30th Avenue Southwest, then proceeds north along 30th Street, crosses 19th Avenue Southwest, and continues north along the west side of County Road 5, crossing Highway 12, and up to 1st Avenue Northwest in Voss Park. Mr. Halverson then went over the fiscal impacts of the project and the schedule with a completion date in November of 2013. In order to proceed with this project, the plans and specs need to be approved and a bid opening date set. A motion is made, seconded, and passed for the following, and I want to introduce the motion to approve plans and specs for project number 1110 and authorize advertisement for bids to be opened June 5, 2012.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the plans and specifications for project number 1110 and authorize advertisement for bids to be opened June 5th, 2012. Is there discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Darkin.
Aye.
Fagerly?
Aye.
DeBleek?
Aye.
Reese?
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion carries.
Item number 2 was consideration of foul permits. The first one is at 422 Charlotte Avenue, or Charlotte Street Southeast. We received an application from Ken Vianney to keep 20 show pigeons in a loft behind his residence at 422 Charlotte Street Southeast. Mr. Vianney has raised pigeons for many years, and the city has never had a complaint from anyone in his neighborhood. Staff recommended approval, so a motion was made, seconded, and passed to the following, and I will introduce the recommendation, which is to approve the foul permit at 422 Charlotte Street Southeast for a period of 1 year.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the foul permit at 422 Charlotte Street Southeast for a period of 1 year. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries.
The second permit was for 2216 Southwest 22nd Street. This application was for a foul permit, and it was received from Marcia Hegraberg to keep 4 chickens at her residence. The fowl will be housed in a portable chicken coop in a garden shed in the backyard, which is completely fenced in. Staff did conduct a site visit and felt that there was nothing, that nothing could be identified that should cause any alarm to the neighbors. Motion was made, seconded, to pass for the following, and I will introduce the motion to approve the foul permit at 2216 Southwest 22nd Street for a period of 1 year.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the foul permit at 2216 Southwest 22nd Street for a period of 1 year. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries.
Along those same lines, Councilman DeBleek asked that if the policy for keeping of livestock, swine, or fowl be reviewed in relation to how many animals or birds may be allowed per permit, and that the total number of permits, and for the total number of permits allowed citywide. Item number 3 was to call for assessment hearing. Our Public Works Director, Wilson, informed the committee that bids were received for the 2012 street and other improvement projects. 3 contractors submitted bids for 1201A Mill and Overlay Project, with the apparent low bid being that of Dunnick Incorporated. Their bid was $216,795.50, which was under the engineer's estimate of $232. 4 bids were received for the 1201B Street and underground project, including an alternate bid for concrete on Royce Avenue, adjacent to Walt's Car Wash. The apparent low bid for this project was also Dunnick Incorporated. The amount was $965,425.55 for the bituminous and $968,617.30 for the concrete alternate. The engineer's estimate on this project was over $1 million. City Council is required to hold an assessment hearing for the improvements, and staff recommended a hearing date of June 4th, 2012. Once again, a motion was made, seconded, and passed for the following, and I will introduce the motion to call for an assessment hearing at 7:02 p.m. for June 4th, 2012.
Second.
A motion has been made to call for an assessment hearing at 7:02 p.m. on June 4th, the council meeting at 2012, I'm sorry. And is there discussion?
Question.
Sure.
Do we have, I cannot be there June 4th. Does that complicate things at all?
No, 7 votes is for ordering
7
the
is enough?
improvement.
Okay, because I will be absent on the June 4th meeting.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman?
A question for Holly. I know we took a bid for the concrete also, and where does that go? Do we ask the neighborhood or at the hearing if they'd prefer that versus the asphalt, or?
Go ahead.
My recommendation would be that we would discuss it at the assessment hearing, and that would be the council's decision of whether they wanted to pick up that additional cost for the concrete or not.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
And that motion carries.
Item number 4 was several miscellaneous items. The first one being from our Councilmember Dockin. He requested that the staff look into the boulevard areas disturbed during street projects to make sure the seating gets established. He mentioned several areas in the past where the seed in the boulevards did not hold very well. Councilman DeBree requested that the transportation plan done in 2003 be reviewed. Our police chief and fire chief gave brief updates on the status of crime, the interview process for 2 new police officers, and the training progress of the new firefighters. I also asked that the city look into street sweeping, that it may be privatized and maybe a private-public sweeping be done using the city sweeper for fall and spring when the leaves are heavy and it's damp, and using a private contractor for summer. We'll be looking at this at the next Public Works meeting. There being no further business to come before the committee, the meeting adjourned, and I would recommend that we file the minutes.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to file the minutes of the Public Works Safety Committee report for April 24th, 2012.
Question.
Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, Ron, do we know how many affected property owners there are with the last improvement project in Roy's Avenue? With the difference of $3,192, I'm just curious. Does anybody know how many people are affected in that assessment hearing?
I don't personally, but maybe Holly does.
How many properties?
Approximately.
I don't know the total number of properties affected by the entire project, but the properties affected by the bituminous versus concrete is 1 or 2. Primarily it's Waltz that would be affected, and it would affect their operations of whether we do concrete or bituminous and how that's phased.
Okay, thank
The
you.
assessments would affect, the amount that we assess would affect all property owners though, because we do figure our assessments for all of the property owners.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. The Community Development Committee report for April 26, 2012. Councilman Dockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1 was public comments, and there were no public comments offered at this meeting. Item number 2, the Lakeland Hotel redevelopment proposal, no recommendation. Rick Goodman of Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership presented a proposal for the redevelopment of the former Lakeland Hotel building. They plan to apply for tax credits, and the application is due June 12th, 2012. The tax credit application is driving the speed at which the municipal approval is needed. Redevelopment costs are estimated at $3.6 million. Financing consists of low-income housing tax credits, federal and state historic tax credits, owner equity, and tax abatement. When questioned about parking, Mr. Goodman said the reduction in unit count from the present 30 units would lessen the impact of parking in the downtown. Mr. Goodman stated that tax abatement calculations have not been completed. He anticipated that the abatement would not be needed initially, but that as the project got into year 6 or 7, there could be a cash flow issue. The property currently pays $12,000 a year in real estate taxes. Mr. Goodman said there were income qualifications for rental units, and that the income for occupancy can increase without limit after original qualifications. A major focus of the rehabilitation would be to restore and maintain the historic nature of the building. One early step in the process would be to conduct a rental housing analysis to reaffirm the need for the project. Mr. Goodman estimated that the project would be scheduled for construction beginning in the summer of 2013. Steve Rehnquist of the EDC supported development of quality housing downtown. He stated that that was his opinion, and it didn't come from the EDC board. Richard Angen said that the proposed project was tied to the proposed downtown plan and would be consistent with the plan element calling for expansion of quality housing in the central business district. Following discussion, a motion was made by Councilmember DeBleek, seconded by Councilmember Anderson, to support the application for low-income housing tax credits. The motion failed on a 2-2 vote and was to go to the council without recommendation. Voting for the motion were Anderson, DeBleek. Voting against the motion were Dockin and Christensen. Item number 3, downtown plan, and this is a motion. Chair Dockin read a letter he sent to City Administrator Stevens expressing concern over downtown plan elements and funding. He said the plan was good, but should not be a priority when compared to other matters. He offered the opinion that public dollars should only be spent for public purposes, and that he was not convinced that downtown development had a public purpose. Staff reviewed the plan elements and implementation process. For further information on the plan, you can see the City of Willmar website. City Administrator Stevens presented a document showing the possible CBD capital improvements for the years 2013 through 2017. These were for projects that the city was identified in the plan as the champion to complete. The committee was reminded by staff that many plan elements do not require capital dollars, and that the plan doesn't rely solely on public financing. The private sector plays a major part in accomplishing plan elements. Councilmember Anderson said the plan is a good start toward preserving past investments in the downtown. Councilmember DeBleek stated that the plan is a good way to promote public investment and that downtown redevelopment is a public purpose. Councilmember Christensen said much of the public expenditures are for public infrastructure, which supports private development. Following discussion, a motion was made and seconded by Member Anderson, seconded by Member Christensen, and passed for the following: to set a public hearing on the ordinance to develop the plan for the May 21st, 2012 council meeting. Do we have a date on that as of yet?
It will be May 21st.
That's going to be the date of the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
That is what's proposed if you make that motion for that
Okay,
resolution.
I would make that motion.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to set a public hearing on an ordinance to adopt the plan for the May 21st, 2012 council meeting. Discussion? If I have a question going back to item number 2. Where does that go from here?
Well, I think first I would vote on the motion on the floor, and then we could go back to item number 2 at this point, after that. But my recommendation would be that you vote on the motion on the floor on item 3, and then if you want to discuss another item, we go back to it.
All those in favor, oh, I'm sorry, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. And now we should go back to item number 2?
Yes.
I would like to know where that goes from here.
Where it would go from here is it would come to the city council on May 21st for you to act upon with the additional information of the tax abatement and such. So it will come without a recommendation from the committee, but it will come to the full council for discussion and decision.
Okay, thank you.
Would make that motion. Do we need that motion tonight?
No, you do not need a motion on that. That is simply just, that is simply for information purposes. It will be, the Lakeland Hotel property will be on your agenda. It will be a separate agenda item on May 21st.
Okay. Item number 4, Chad Haugen sign issue, and this is the motion. Staff presented a request by Chad Haugen that the city consider entering into a terminable leasing agreement to allow his sign at 2125 South First Street to stay within the public right-of-way. Staff stated that they had discussed the matter with the city attorneys, and the terminable licensing agreement was the preferred solution due to a lack of options for a freestanding sign at that location. It was noted that the agreement would be prepared entirely at the cost of the applicant, and that the city would be protected from liability by the terms of the agreement. Following discussion, a motion was made, and I would make that motion to approve the preparation and execution of a terminable license agreement for a freestanding sign in the public right-of-way at 2125 South First Street.
Second. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the preparation and execution of a terminable license agreement for a freestanding sign in the public right-of-way at 2125 South First Street. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a little enlightenment on this. I'm not sure I understand.
I'd ask Mr. Peterson to respond.
Mayor Yanish, members of the council, this was a situation that the city inherited years ago when we annexed this property. There's a long-time freestanding sign that's actually within the city's right-of-way, and it used to be within state highway right-of-way before it was annexed into the city, and I'm not sure the state highway took much of an interest in it, but with the owner of the property changing and the sign faces changing, he was required to come in and get a sign permit, at which time we discovered the encroachment. And we looked at a number of different options for siting a freestanding sign on the property, and they really have no other options that provide any type of visibility. So acting on that, we contacted the city attorney, and we were informed that one way for the city to handle it would be with a terminable agreement that allows it to stay there, but that gives the city the authority to at any time and for any cause order its removal. And that's the direction we think is most prudent to go, given the fact that the property owner really needs the visibility and the ability to get his name out in front of the public.
So is this in the right-of-way between the little service road and the highway?
This is out in front of where Fenstra has their new real estate office on South First Street. It used to be Johnson and Bannon Attorneys.
Oh, over there.
Yeah. And we're talking about an area the sign projects maybe 4 feet in. You know, so we've just described a narrow area about, I don't even recall, 6 or 7 feet long, probably 25 total square feet that needs to be under the terms of this agreement. So, and it's at the way back end of the right-of-way. It's still probably 20 feet behind the sidewalk. It's, you know, there's really no issues, development issues involved in this. It's just a legal issue of making things right.
Okay. I can't envision, I really didn't pay that much attention to it, so
Part of the problem is we've got a little bit of an erratic right-of-way on South First Street too, so there are actually signs that are closer to First Street than this sign. But because of where our right-of-way is, you know, one option would have been to consider vacating right-of-way, but I think it's in the best interest of the city to retain it.
to retain it, yeah. So it should work. Okay, thank you. for clearing
Any
that
further
up.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries.
Item number 5, updates. Staff provided updates on the status of the following projects: Goodwill Building, Airport Land Release, Erickson Building, major retail projects, Applebee's expansion, and Bridgewater College improvements. If there's no further business to come before this, I would move to file these minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. I'm sorry, Councilman Blake?
Just question or clarification back on item 2 yet. You say that is going to be brought by the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership on the 20th?
Yes, on the May 21st. They will be here on May 21st.
They're bringing that, but have not had any committee recommendations?
It will not have a committee recommendation with it, but they will come forward, and they will be seeking a tax abatement.
There's no any kind of a hearing or public hearing, or just a standalone item?
It is a standalone item.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman
Question.
Allen? Sure.
Thank you. Charlene, what was the urgency in this, as far as the timing where it has to come up?
For Lakeland Hotel,
Yes.
it is their application for tax credits. Their deadline is June 12th to do that, and if they don't have a decision from the city, they will not go forward. I mean, they will not be able to go forward, is my understanding.
Okay. Well, I wasn't able to make it at the meeting. I was out of town, as you noticed, and I gave notice that. But as far as the information that was requested by the other guys, are you getting the information, or have we received the information? I just want to make sure that if we make a decision, we've got the right information in front of us. So if not, contact Charlene, I suppose, or we'll get it from the developer.
Yes, I mean, we are working with the developer to get the information on the tax abatement, on what year it is requested and for the duration of it, and then we will have that information prepared for you. If there's anything additional beyond that, you know, certainly the developer will also be here to answer any questions or anything additional that's needed beyond that. Yes, it would be helpful for staff to know that in advance.
Well, just to comment, I just think when I first read this, it isn't very often we get developers that want to do a multi-million-dollar project in downtown. I can't remember when that ever happened, and I've been here since 1974. So I'm excited to see how this is going to work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. And now we have a consideration of a resolution allowing the Willmar Police Department to apply for, and if awarded, receive a grant from Invitation Health Institute for conducting alcohol compliance checks. Chief Weifels.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. This is a grant that the city's participated in for many, many years. It's simply a $30 reimbursement per alcohol compliance check that we make in the city. That money normally comes out of our forfeiture budget to actually perform the alcohol compliance checks. And then if we apply for the grant and if it's approved, we would receive $30 for each business checked. We do 2 checks per year, and that would come to 21 businesses times $30 twice a year, or times $60 for the year. So it's about $1,200 back to the city, and that's what I'm asking to apply for and receive if approved.
Chief.
Move to approve.
Second.
Question.
Councilman Allen?
Does this, with these hours that the police officers are going to be doing, does any of those hours include overtime, or is this their normal business working hours?
No, this is money that comes directly back to the city for work we'd be doing anyway.
Okay. But this is not related to overtime, and I guess that answers my question. I understand. Thank you.
A motion has been made and accepted, seconded to adopt the resolution allowing staff to apply for and if awarded, to accept the grant as requested for the stated purpose of conducting alcohol compliance checks. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Amman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
And that motion carries. And item 14, consideration of preliminary final plat for the food shelf. Bruce.
Mayor Yanish, members of the council, the city received an application from the food shelf for plat approval. They have purchased property from the BNSF Railroad and wish to combine their existing parcel with a larger tract to the west that would give them ownership all the way up to 7th Street. The primary reason for this is for better truck access and parking for their employees and visitors. In the interest of expediency, and because it is such a simple and uncomplicated plat, we've combined the preliminary and final plat processes, and this particular plat adoption should only require one motion from the council, and it's a recommendation of staff that the council act to approve the final plat of Food Shelf Edition.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilman Reed?
Okay, question. Bruce, when the elevator was there, that was still owned by the railroad? Did they just lease the property then, or the elevator never owned that, huh?
No, almost all this property along here was railroad lease at one time, and they've slowly sold the parcels off.
Interesting that they're willing to sell now.
They won't, BNSF wants to liquidate everything they don't use.
Okay.
Councilman DeBlee?
Question, I don't, maybe Bruce can answer this. Now, this lot they intend to use for parking, is that going to be paved over?
Initially, I don't believe they have any plans to pave it. It's got a pretty good gravel base on there from when the elevator was there, and then they tore the elevator down and reclaimed it. In the past, I think there have been some weed issues that they will have to stay on top of, but we've not seen any proposal to pave it right away. And part of the reason is they have hopes of putting a greenhouse on a portion of the property at some point in the future. And, you know, it wouldn't be a huge greenhouse, but it would be, you know, fairly sizable, possibly 5,000 to 7,000 square feet is what I've heard. So they don't, you know, they don't want to put paving in and then rip it out. So this is just the first step in their use and redevelopment of that site.
They haven't brought a plan forward yet for use or redevelopment, just parking?
Right.
At what point would they have to bring that, or bring that plan forward?
We haven't really talked directly with them about that. If they want to do the greenhouse addition, then they're going to or the greenhouse project, they would definitely have to bring that through the planning commission and the council. But, you know, the property is going to be used the same as it has been. If the council wants to move forward with a paved parking requirement right now, we can certainly do that, but in the interest of stormwater volume or quantity, I would say let's leave it gravel. For water quality purposes, you know, the pavement's better because you don't have the gravel washing into the street, but I don't think the predominant slope of this property is to the street. I think the predominant slope is back towards the railroad.
Yeah, I just, when, you know, if we require them to have any kind of stormwater plan or anything like that before they develop the lot.
Well, they've been using it for years, and you really won't see any major difference just looking at it. They'll just have legal use of the property.
Okay.
Bruce, since we have your attention, can I ask you, does this greenhouse that they're talking about, does that talk about capturing steam from the municipal utilities?
That has been discussed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Keeping with the greenhouse, or the Green Step City? Where did I leave off?
There was a motion.
We have a motion.
You have a motion and a second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the preliminary final plat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. And we'll get into the consideration of resolution designating polling locations for 2012 elections. Kevin, would you like to explain that to us?
Mayor Yanish, members of the council, you have before you a resolution designating the polling locations that are to be used in the 2012 primary and general elections. It needs to be adopted pursuant to state law so that we can clearly list these on the postcards that'll soon be mailed to those people that have been changed from their precincts. You have an amended resolution on your desk. We learned today from the county staff that the state is requiring us to make some sort of note on the 2nd Ward, 4th Precinct, which is simply a precinct designated for the wastewater treatment plant and the airport where no voters will ever reside. But since it's an actual precinct, we need to include that, and we'll call it a mail ballot. There's no sense designating a polling location since it won't be held there. It is staff's recommendation to adopt this as listed.
Also move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded to adopt the resolution designating polling locations, the polling locations. Discussion? Councilman Fagerly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder, Kevin, the residents from Sperryville, they're moving into the 3rd Ward, and they'll vote at Highland,
At Highland,
and then postcards will be mailed out
correct.
shortly.
Believe the state will carry that out when we're adopting the new plan tomorrow with the county, or working on the new plan tomorrow, and they should be going out in about 2 weeks.
Is that the only change?
No, all the changes that were there. He's listing a main one.
No, but I mean, is that the only change that was made?
No, there was changes by Royce and Robbins Island. There were changes down 9th Street where they were talking about the flood.
It's all the changes that
Yeah.
were previously presented to the council
Yeah,
and
we
adopted by
had
council.
about 5 groups.
And that information is also available on the city's website.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Dockin?
Aye.
Fagerly?
Aye.
Tableek?
Aye.
Reese?
Aye.
Christensen?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Amman?
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion carries. And we've come to the point of the announcement of the council committee meeting dates. Councilman Reese?
I don't remember the date. 15th, Tuesday the 15th, 4:45.
Councilman Amman?
Tomorrow, Labor Relations, the 8th, 4:45, conference room, number 1, main floor.
Councilman Daca?
May 17th at 4:45, conference room 1.
And Councilman Anderson?
Finance Committee will meet Monday, the 14th at 4:45.
Thank you very much. Is there any miscellaneous? Councilman Reese?
Just one, I know it's a month early, but I might as well do it now. Asked to be excused from the June 4th City Council meeting.
That's fine, thank you. Councilman Amman, did you have a question?
No, I just want to make a comment. I passed out in front of the council and mayor administrator today the annual report for the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me. It's pretty self-explanatory. The budget's maintained fairly flat with very limited increases in their budgets. And that's about it.
Charlene, can you give us the specifics on the open house at Midwest?
I do not have that information with me. Mr. Peterson, do you have the information on the open house?
I will try to recall. It is next Tuesday, and which is May 15th. And I'm trying to recall the timing.
We will get you that information.
2 to 4 p.m.
Yeah, that's what I remembered. It was afternoon. It's 2 to 4. The actual festivities with the college president are to occur at 2:15.
So we have the president and the vice president of the University of Minnesota coming out?
That is correct.
And I do happen to know, I talked with Steve Rehnquist today, and he said that the governor and the 2 senators from this area were invited. So whether they will come is another question. They've been invited. Thank you. Any further miscellaneous? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Personnel.